My name is Nicole Mitchell, and I'm 29 years old. If you asked me a few months ago what love looked like, I would have told you it was a Thursday evening in our small kitchen with the scent of garlic and olive oil filling the air. Thursday was pasta night. Not just any pasta, his favorite linguine with clams cooked the way he liked it, with white wine, a drizzle of the expensive olive oil we'd carried home from Italy, and enough parsley to look like a little garden on a plate. It was my ritual, my anchor. I thought of it as building something invisible between us, brick by brick, meal by meal, a fortress to protect us from the world outside. He worked long hours, he got stressed, and I believe food could soften sharp edges. Maybe it was naive, but I held on to it. That night, Orlando had come home quieter than usual. He'd tossed his bag by the door, slumped onto the sofa, and scrolled through his phone without changing out of his work clothes. His tie hung loose, his shoulders heavy. I thought, okay, pasta will fix this. It always had. I chopped garlic into translucent slivers, tossed them into the hot pan, and smiled as they danced in the oil. My mind was already painting the evening we'd eat, maybe share a bottle of wine, collapse onto the couch, and watch that ridiculous dating show he pretended to hate but never missed. Normal, warm, safe. Dinner's almost ready, I called over my shoulder. You hungry? He hummed, not really an answer. I told myself he was tired. Men don't always talk, I reminded myself. Silence isn't always rejection. The clams began to pop open, releasing their salty perfume. I reached for the colander, preparing to drain the linguine. My internal monologue was a soft current. He'll relax. He'll smile. We'll be okay. Then Orlando's voice cut through the hum of boiling water. Casual, almost bored. You know what's strange? I didn't turn. I smiled faintly, assuming he was about to share some stupid meme from his feed. What's that, I asked? And then he said it. Every time you touch me now, he muttered, eyes glued to his screen. I think about how much better Melissa would be. The world didn't explode. It didn't tilt. It simply stopped. My hand froze midair, the colander slipping against the edge of the sink. The sizzle of the pan. The roar of boiling water, all of it dulled, like I'd been dunked underwater. I turned slowly, like my body was moving through syrup. He hadn't even looked up. His thumb kept flicking the screen blue light, carving hollows into his face. What my voice cracked like glass. He lifted his gaze, but not to meet mine. He looked past me like he was explaining the weather to a stranger. I mean, you're nice. Comfortable. But Melissa, she actually knows how to make a man feel wanted. The name hit me like a slap. Melissa, his trainer. The one who posted endless photos of gym mirrors and smoothies with captions about optimizing your grind. I'd met her once. Glossy hair, glossy smile. She'd shaken my hand without ever really seeing me. My lips trembled. Melissa, your trainer. Yeah, he shrugged, impatient. It's just different. Don't make a big deal out of it. And then, as if nothing had happened, his eyes fell back to the screen in his hand. Conversation over. Inside, something cracked open. A fortress I had spent years building gone, reduced to dust with one sentence dropped like crumbs on the kitchen floor. I stared at him, the man I thought I knew, and suddenly he was a stranger. The garlic smelled bitter. The clams looked grotesque. The meal I had prepared with love was now nothing but a prop in a play that had ended mid-scene. He hadn't just broken my heart. He'd dismissed it. And in that moment, though, I didn't realize it yet, I knew my time in that apartment, in that life, was already over. Dinner was ready. The clams had opened, the pasta steamed in the colander, and the sauce shimmered under the kitchen light. It should have been beautiful. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like I was plating food at a funeral. I set 2 plates on the table, my movements mechanical. My voice sounded foreign, detached. Dinner's ready. Orlando slid into his usual chair, scrolling on his phone with his free hand. He didn't notice the tremor in mine, the way my fork clattered faintly against porcelain. He twirled the pasta, shoved it into his mouth, chewed. Normal. Effortlessly normal. I stared at him, wondering if I'd imagined it, if I'd misheard. But no, the words were still echoing inside my skull. Every time you touch me, I think about how much better Melissa would be. The silence between us grew thick, heavy, almost material. It pressed against my chest, made it hard to breathe. I swallowed a bite of linguine. It turned to ash on my tongue. This is good, he said absently, eyes darting back to his phone as a notification lit up the screen. He smiled faintly at Melissa's name, no doubt. The bite in my mouth stuck in my throat. My stomach churned. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab his phone, throw it against the wall, demand he look at me, at us, at what he'd just shattered. But instead I sat in silence, chewing nothing, my face calm, my insides burning. I studied him as if he were a stranger I'd just met, the curve of his jaw once so familiar, the mole near his collarbone I used to kiss, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck when he needed a trim. All of it suddenly felt foreign, detached. And him so casual, so unbothered, not a trace of guilt, no pause, no hesitation, just a shrug, a fork, another bite of pasta. My mind drifted backward. The nights we'd stayed up talking until sunrise. The mornings he used to bring me coffee in bed. The way he once said, "You make me feel like the luckiest man alive." I pressed my fork into the pasta, trying to find those memories inside him now. But they weren't there. They had evaporated. Dinner stretched on like an endless play, where only one actor knew the script had changed. He ate. I pretended to. My hands shook beneath the table hidden in my lap. When he finished, Orlando carried his plate to the sink, rinsed it, set it in the dishwasher. Routine. Always routine. Then he stretched and yawned. "I'm beat," he muttered. "Gonna shower and crash. You coming?" The words were casual, ordinary, as if he hadn't detonated our lives an hour earlier. I forced a thin smile. "I've got some cleaning up to do. I'll be there later." He nodded, kissed my forehead like he always did, and disappeared down the hall. I stood frozen, the touch burning like acid. The sound of the shower starting up in the bathroom felt like mockery. I sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched plate of pasta in front of me. The silence was suffocating. But inside that suffocation, a strange clarity began to bloom. He thought he could reduce me to comfortable. He thought I'd sit there swallowing betrayal along with cold pasta. But my silence wasn't weakness, it was calculation. I didn't know it then, not fully. But deep down in the quiet of that suffocating kitchen, I was already making a decision. I wouldn't fight for him, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't scream. I would leave. And when I did, I would make sure he felt the weight of absence, the kind of silence that couldn't be ignored. The sound of running water echoed down the hallway pipes, groaning with the steady rhythm of his shower. Normally, it was comforting part of the soundtrack of our life. Tonight, it was just noise, white noise, against the storm inside me. I stood at the sink, staring at my untouched plate. My fork was still resting in the pasta, twisted in a way that looked staged. A photograph of domesticity, a lie. My hands moved before my brain caught up. I scraped the meal into the trash, the clams, the breadcrumbs, the perfect linguine. Gone. A quiet act of erasure. Then I walked to the closet. My old duffel bag waited on the top shelf, folded, forgotten. I pulled it down. My hands shook, but not with fear. It felt surgical, precise. I started in the living room. The books that were mine, my headphones, the framed photo of us. At the beach, I left it. Let it rot here. Let it mock him. In the bathroom, I took my toiletries. My razor, my skincare, my perfume. Every trace of me disappeared from the shelves. In the bedroom, I paused. He was lying on the bed, hair damp from the shower, scrolling on his phone again, oblivious. He didn't glance at me as I opened the dresser drawers. I waited for him to ask what I was doing, to notice, to care. But nothing. Anger surged. It rose in my throat like fire demanding to be released. Yell at him, shake him, demand answers. But anger was still giving him something. Attention. Energy. And I realized I didn't want to give him anything anymore. So I swallowed it. My movements slowed. Calm. Precise. I folded my clothes neatly into boxes, one by one. I left the sweater he always stole from me, draped across the chair. I left the t-shirt I slept in. What I took was mine alone, my passport, my documents, the fragments of a life that belonged to me, not us. At some point, Orlando fell asleep. His phone slipped from his hand screen, dimming as his chest rose and fell in steady, careless rhythm. I stood in the doorway, watching him. He looked peaceful, innocent. It would have been easy to believe he was the man I'd fallen in love with. But I knew better now. That version of him had never truly existed. By 3 a.m, the apartment was stripped of me. 3 cardboard boxes and a duffel bag that was all it took to dismantle 2 years of my life. I placed the boxes in my car, the night air cool and sharp against my skin. The street was silent, empty, as if it was holding its breath for me. On my final trip back inside, I walked to the kitchen counter. I slipped my key off the ring, set it down on the cold granite. The metallic click was small, but it rang in my chest like a bell. That key had opened the door to what I thought was home. Now it was nothing more than a piece of metal on a counter. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even whisper goodbye. I closed it softly, the latch clicking shut with an eerie finality. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light. Empty, yes, but empty in a way that made room for something new. I drove across town to a 24-hour diner. The neon buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. I ordered a coffee I didn't touch. I sat there numb but steady as the sun began to rise. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called my boss. My voice sounded strangely normal. "Hi, it's Nicole. I'm dealing with a personal emergency. I need to take the day." Then I called the landlord. "This is Nicole Mitchell. I'm removing myself from the lease at 214 Maple Drive, effective immediately. Orlando Grant will assume full financial responsibility." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure, Ms. Mitchell?" "Everything is settled," I said, and it was. I hung up, watching sunlight bleed across the diner windows. For the first time, silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt like space, like possibility. I wasn't Nicole with Orlando anymore. I was just Nicole. And that was enough. The studio apartment was nothing special. Beige walls, a single window that stared at a brick wall, a couch that smelled faintly of bleach. But to me, it was sanctuary. For the first time in years, I could breathe without second-guessing the weight of someone else's sigh. Silence here wasn't loaded with judgment or hidden resentment. It was just silence. Clean. Empty. Mine. The first week felt strange. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Orlando. At first, they were sharp and confused. Text 1. "Where the hell are you? All your stuff is gone. Did you seriously just walk out?" Text 2. "This isn't funny, Nicole. Call me back. We need to talk." I read them in the glow of my new apartment's single lamp, and for the first time I didn't feel guilt, just detachment. I didn't block his number, not yet. A part of me needed to see it unfold, to watch the empire of his arrogance crumble without me. I filled the silence with new routines. I joined a no-frills gym down the street, a place with chipped paint and the metallic clank of real iron weights, not Melissa's polished, perfumed training ground. The burn in my muscles was clean pain, the kind that clarified instead of clouded. I ran until my lungs burned, lifted until my arms shook, showered, until steam wrapped around me like armor. Each day my body felt a little more like mine again. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. I'd let Orlando's orbit shrink my world without even realizing it. Now, sitting in a noisy bar with them, laughing over greasy fries and bad beer, I remembered how easy it used to be to feel light, to belong to myself. Orlando's messages shifted in tone after a week. The panic had set in. Voicemail 1. "Look, I don't know what you think you're proving, but rent's due and I can't cover it alone. You can't just disappear like this. Grow up, Nicole." His voice was tight, sharp around the edges. I almost smiled. He still thought this was about logistics. Rent, responsibility. He couldn't fathom that the problem wasn't money, it was him. I deleted the voicemail without a second listen. 2 days later, another one came. This time softer, hesitant. Voicemail 2. "Nicole, please, I get it. Okay, I screwed up. But Melissa doesn't mean anything. It was just stupid words. I miss you. Can we talk?" I closed my eyes, listening to his voice, that same voice that once whispered promises in the dark. It didn't stir me anymore. It felt hollow, like a recording played too many times. I didn't call back. At night, when the city outside was quiet, I lay in bed and thought about what he'd said to me. The cruelty of it, the casualness. How easy it had been for him to slice through me with one sentence. And yet here I was, breathing, healing, not broken, rebuilt. The silence that once haunted me was now teaching me something vital. I didn't need to fill it with anyone else's voice. It was enough to fill it with mine. One morning, I sat by the small window of my studio, a mug of coffee warming my hands, and realized something. Orlando had wanted me to be comfortable, ordinary, background noise. But silence had taught me I was more than that. I was not background, I was the story. And his part in it was already over. The texts began to shift. They weren't angry anymore, they were desperate. Text 3, 1:14 a.m. "I'm sorry. I never meant it the way it sounded. You are the best thing I ever had. Please, Nicole." Text 4:1:27 a.m. "Melissa doesn't care about me. She's not you. Please answer me." I read them in the sober light of morning, the sun creeping between beige blinds. My coffee was bitter, but grounding. His words didn't sting anymore. They just sat there, sad little echoes from someone who had once believed he could throw me away. By the third week, the messages turned erratic. Voicemail 3. Nicole, I saw Melissa at the gym. She was laughing with another guy, doing the same thing she did with me. God, I was so stupid. I thought I mattered. Please, I can't do this alone. His voice cracked. I almost didn't recognize it. This wasn't the confident, dismissive man who had told me not to make a big deal out of it. This was someone cornered by his own choices, clawing for a way out. But his pain didn't move me. It clarified me. Melissa hadn't stolen him. He had offered himself to her, and now she had tossed him aside like a used towel in the gym locker room. Karma had better timing than I ever could. A week later, another message arrived. This one sober, grim. Text 5:10:03 a.m. Had to move. Couldn't keep the apartment without you. I'm in some shitty studio now. I can't believe this is my life. Please just talk to me. I stared at the message for a long time. My lips curled into something between a smirk and a sigh. He was in a studio now, just like me, but his was filled with regret, loneliness, and the rubble of his own arrogance. Mine was a canvas, a place where I was building something new. I didn't reply. And yet part of me couldn't help but marvel at the symmetry. He had taken the fortress I built for us and poisoned it with Melissa's name. Now he was the one exiled, sitting in a cramped box, haunted by ghosts of choices he couldn't undo. Meanwhile, my silence was no longer absence. It was a statement, a wall, a power he couldn't scale. He kept trying. The drunk texts multiplied, spilling over like broken glass. Text 6, 1:42 a.m. Do you ever think of me? Because I think about you all the time. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Text 7, 1:59 a.m. Please, Nicole, one call, just one. I don't have anyone else. I read them like someone might read a stranger's diary left on a park bench. Detached, curious, but untouched. The truth was simple. He was no longer my responsibility. His downfall wasn't my burden to fix. He had chosen Melissa. He had chosen betrayal. And now he was learning what it meant to live with the echo of his own cruelty. I closed my phone, set it face down on the table, and sipped my coffee. Somewhere, Orlando was drowning in his own silence. But in mine, I was learning how to breathe again. 2 months had passed since I left. 2 months of silence. 2 months of reclaiming myself piece by piece. My studio had begun to feel less temporary, more like a sanctuary. The beige walls now held shelves of books. A plant sat in the corner, reaching for the sun through the narrow window. My body was stronger, my mind clearer. The Nicole who once twisted herself to keep Orlando comfortable, she was gone. I was pulling on my jacket, ready to meet friends for drinks, when a sound broke the quiet. A knock, hesitant, uneven. No one knocked here. My stomach tightened. I didn't need to check the peephole. I already knew. Still, I looked, and there he was. Orlando. But not the Orlando I had known. The sharp edges of his confidence were dulled. His shoulders slumped. His skin looked pale, almost gray. He clutched his phone like a lifeline, his thumb twitching against it, as if Melissa might still text. His eyes, once quick to dismiss now, darted nervously around the hallway before landing on my door. I opened it not wide, just enough. Nicole, his voice cracked. Relief and desperation tangled together. His eyes widened, scanning me. God, you look good. He was right. I felt good. Stronger, steadier. The kind of good that didn't need validation from him. I leaned casually against the frame, arms crossed. Can I help you? My tone was flat, polite, as if he were a stranger asking for directions. The words knocked him off balance. He had come prepared for tears or anger, or at least a door slammed in his face. Not this, not indifference. He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. I had to see you. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. His eyes glossed with tears he probably thought would move me. Melissa was nothing. She used me. You were everything. He took a half step forward. Please, just talk to me. Just give me a chance to make this right. I let silence fill the air, heavy and deliberate. He shifted under it, his desperation growing as mine waned. Finally, I tilted my head, studying him the way you'd study a chair left out on the curb. Something once useful, now unwanted. Is Melissa busy tonight? I asked softly, almost conversationally. The effect was instant. His face drained of color. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He recoiled as if the words themselves had struck him. I didn't stop. I let the knife twist, because I definitely am. The silence that followed was thick, absolute. He understood. He had wanted me to remember Melissa's name that night at dinner. Now I had returned the favor sharper than any scream could have been. I didn't wait for him to speak. I didn't slam the door. I simply closed it, softly, firmly, utterly final. On the other side, I heard a choked sob, then footsteps retreating down the hallway. Inside, I exhaled slowly, calm, weightless. The silence that rushed back into my apartment didn't feel empty, it felt whole. This time, silence wasn't his weapon. It was mine. After Orlando walked away from my door, I stood still for a long time, listening. Not for him, he was gone. I was listening to the silence that remained. And for the first time in years, it wasn't empty. It was full. 2 months earlier, I had sat in a diner under flickering neon lights, shaking hollow, clinging to a bitter cup of coffee. Back then, silence had felt like exile, proof that I had lost. Now silence was proof I had survived. Life began to bloom quietly in the spaces he once occupied. My studio was no longer just beige walls and a couch that smelled like bleach. It was home. My books lined the shelves again. The plant in the corner had stretched taller, stubbornly alive. I cooked for myself, not rituals to hold someone else together, but meals I enjoyed on plates I chose. I'd landed a new job. Better pay, real growth. My mornings started with strong coffee by the window, the sun brushing brick in shades of gold. My evenings ended with laughter friends. I'd reconnected with people who reminded me of who I was before I shrank myself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Sometimes when my phone buzzed, I still half expected it to be him. Old muscle memory. But I never looked. He had become irrelevant, a ghost fading into static. What struck me most was this: I didn't hate him. Hatred would mean I still carried him with me. Instead, I felt nothing, and nothing was beautiful. I thought back to that night in the kitchen, the scent of garlic and clams, the fortress I thought I was building. I realized now it had never been a fortress. It had been a cage, and I had been the one locking myself inside. When Orlando muttered Melissa's name that night, he thought he was destroying me. In truth, he set me free. Free to walk away, free to rebuild, free to sit here now in the quiet no longer haunted. As I stood at my window, coffee warming my hands, the city humming below, I smiled. The silence wasn't his anymore. It was mine, and it was enough.